What's going on? Welcome to the ENN show, everything and nothing. In this show, we are for the people, by the people. We're just a bunch of real people having real experiences, having real conversations from all different types of walks of life. So that's what we do. We just have chats, and we cover all kinds of topics, everything and nothing off the table. Today we got my boy Jesse. We go way back. We met in the surf capital of Canada, and yeah, we've been best friends ever since. Been just living life, man. So yeah, we're gonna dive into it. Jesse, how you been, brother? What's up?
It's good, man. It's first of all, thanks for having me on the ENN, everything and nothing. I like that intro. It's cool. I'm feeling good. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny too. You mentioned just how we met and everything, and been best friends since. And I haven't seen you in a while, man. So it's good to actually catch up and chat. And I'm glad to be doing this podcast with you. And yeah.
Yeah, I wanna I showed you that clip. Me and Lewis are gonna do another podcast later. So that little snippet will probably be released. But I feel like that topic and talking about relationships, it did mention, in that we'll people will know when this comes out later on. They'll see what we're talking about. But the whole idea of relationships and support networks, the ENN show is, to me, one of those things where it's not really a show. This is more of a community, and there's a lot of forces in the world, and the snippet that we're going to show or whatever later on, it talks about how there are these forces that essentially want to divide us, right? And that's why we're having all these different people on the show, different walks of life, is because we want to show that everyone has a story, and we're not all that different at the end of the day. So if you have it, I don't know if you have any feedback from that snippet I showed you.
Yeah, it was just interesting, that snippet you showed me, and I guess people see later on when it gets spliced up and thrown out there. But it was just really interesting. Everything that AI had mentioned is present. We there's people experiencing this presently in today, everyday life, and it's just really crazy to see the relationship there. I don't know if that because it's happening, that's why AI chose those examples, or if AI is literally just smart enough, or just on this different wavelength where it's thinking of its own scenarios, and it came up with this way to manipulate people's lives. But it was a really interesting thing. And one of the things, actually, I guess it did mention is toxic relationships, and quick satisfaction kind of with dopamine hits and stuff like that. We'll probably discuss that a little bit today about dating apps, meeting people through dating apps, meeting on dating apps, swiping and getting quick dopamine fixes that way, but then also meeting and having relationships that you wouldn't necessarily have with people if you met in real life, but just online. And then maybe some toxicity stems from that because it's people that come from completely different parts of the world, different upbringings, just have different ideas, and so they don't really mix well, I guess, aren't a good fit.
Yeah. I know today we're going to talk about some we're just going to flow and talk about, some how relationships have evolved, right? In that snippet, it talks about kind of what has evolved. I'm sure if you asked AI that same question in the past, right, the AI would give a totally different answer, right? Because the instruments back then were a lot different. You wouldn't have these dating apps the way we have now. You wouldn't have technology. You wouldn't have the way that we, communicate. This podcast. The reason why I feel drawn to do this, just to create. I had a conversation with my boy Ricky. Hopefully, I'll get Ricky on here as well, because we go way back. I don't know if you know Ricky, but we made music together and stuff, and we're talking about all kinds of stuff, man. But Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about him too much, but he mentioned one thing actually that was like I felt it when he said it. He was talking about how like in the past, if you're like walking around, you don't have like a kind like another like thing to pull out. You don't have like a distraction to pull out. Like, you can't pull out your phone. You have to be in the moment. Like people in the past, right? Like he was just saying that people would talk to strangers. Like if you see someone on the street, you would say hey, right? And that was like it was like your community was kind of close knit. Everyone kind of knew each other, right? And like just the rate of growth that we're in now, it's like there's so much going on, and it's hard to really know where people are, because their minds are scattered within these different dimensions of, internet, space, soon to be metaverse, all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a huge point to bring up. When you're out in public and you're just doing your thing, you go out and you order coffee and you're just waiting there for your coffee to be made, and you kind of have this moment where nothing's really happening. And now you can just, reach into your pocket and have like be distracted or entertained and bring up anything that you want to really bring up in that moment where you're just waiting for something to happen. Whereas, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, I guess, you just didn't have this thing like readily accessible in your pocket. And so, yeah, you were kind of forced, not really forced if you didn't want to, but certainly people are interacting more in public. That just doesn't happen anymore. And even if they do, like you said too, like everyone's a bit distracted too. Our attention spans are a lot shorter now, and like we're not really like, I could be talking to you even in this moment, and I know your mind is maybe a bit focused, but it's also probably going other places too. It's just our attention spans now, and so when you meet people in public without the cell phone, like it's they're not even present all the time too. Even if they're not on their phone, they're not always present with you, their mind. So just interesting point as well.
Yeah, and I find just even like even having this conversation, like I can see my mind drifting a little bit. I can see my mind. I bet you people listening to this too, they have their phone going, they have things going on in the background. Their mind's not like, they listen to it and they kind of like are hearing it, and maybe they're internalizing some of it. But I'm sure people are working or like driving in the car. There's noises, people honking or whatever. There's stuff going on, and it really is a attention economy. Everyone's just trying to, like, there's just so much going on. Everyone's trying to get their their piece of the pie, right? And so in saying that, like, when I was at dinner with a friend of the family's, right, and this is thing I told you before, but it's one thing I never really considered. And I don't even actually know where I heard it, but I just remember someone saying that relationships now, it's harder to have those connections. It's harder to like just meeting a person, right, and having the capacity and the neural chemistry, like the serotonin, the dopamine available to actually make those neural connections, to like be present enough to feel some type of love or like connection with this person. Like in today, right, that it's been so diminished, that those dopamine stores, that like we're less likely to fall in love with our partners or just be like present with our friends, to be connect in that way. I remember, like, I don't know about you, but I remember when I was a kid, like, you just hit up your friend, right? You just go like and throw a ball around, bro, and that was like the best thing ever. And you remember that, that's like, that was like a big deal to you. You're just like on the street throwing a ball around, and you're like, yo, this is the shit. But now it's like, no, like, it's boring. It's boring to me. Like,
What's funny, man? Actually, bringing up that point too, is it still kind of is the best thing ever if you actually pay attention to it and you're actually there, present and stuff like that, and you're not thinking about other things. Especially if you put down the cell phone for a few days before and you don't have that like low levels of dopamine, kind of it just going out and having fun, get some exercise, and that social interaction is still the best thing ever. So sorry to cut you off, but
no, yeah,
I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, but it's just funny how we forget those things too. We don't do it as often because there are a lot more distractions in today's world.
Yeah.
But yeah, to kind of go off what you said too, like, I totally agree in that, because of all the distractions and instant satisfaction we can get through cell phones, and just like, Uber Eats being brought right to your house, Netflix, you just turn it on and there's a million movies to pick from right there. You don't have to do the work of driving to the store anymore. So there's all these like instant gratification or satisfaction and dopamine hits that are happening in our lives now, where you're right in that. I think when it comes to relationships, when people meet, there's not this real intense feeling of like a spark necessarily anymore. It's not as exciting as it maybe could be, because we're just so filled with dopamine all the time. And I actually learned this on a podcast recently, Andrew Huberman's podcast.
Yeah, shout out.
I learned this past September, a few months ago. I heard it on his podcast. It went on, and they were discussing how dopamine is like a meter, and actually you get these little hits, and so it'll increase, right? But it takes a second for it, like, after that hit is done, it actually goes the reverse way. And it takes a while to go back to baseline. And so if you're constantly getting all this dopamine, the meter's going way up, right? When it goes down, it goes way down. And it takes a long time for that to kind of, regulate. And so I think what, you see with relationships today and stuff like that is because our dopamine meter is always up. And then when it goes down, and you meet somebody in your life that's supposed to cause this spark, supposed to cause this good feeling of a romantic connection, it's not the same as it maybe could have been or once was.
Yeah, I actually have a story I told you I was going to save for this, and it has to do with like my parents. And speaking of like relationships and stuff, it's like we as this generation kind of built our models based on our parents and how they did it, right? Like, and the older I get, the more experience I get, and just like talking to people, you realize that everyone has a different, like set of values and different like set of beliefs around, how relationships are built and everything. And it wasn't until like recently where I found out how my parents met. Like, I don't know if you ever asked your parents, but it's wild, man. Like today, right? Like most relationships, I don't know what's going on. Most relationship, right? Like, how did you meet your wife? Oh, on Tinder. Like I just swiped on her, and it's such a contrast, dude. Like, so my dad, I'm just going to give it a brief, overview, but what he said was he saw her at the gym one time, right? And he liked her, but he like wasn't, I think, she was seeing someone or something like that. And so I think like the vibe wasn't really quite there, because like she wasn't totally open to it, but he really was like attracted to her. And it kind of right. Like he saw her, he immediately was like, yo, I want to ask this girl out. But I think he missed a moment or something, or like he suggested, like they talked, right? And then he was like, that night he realized like, I need to talk to her, like I need to ask her out. I need to find her contact. Right. So he literally had to go, and like, I think she mentioned that she was in school, and like mentioned the school that she was in and everything. My dad literally had to go track her down, bro. Like he had to go call the school and ask around, hey, does anyone know such and such? Does anyone know? Like he had to, bro, like for days on end, he would call and see if anyone knew. And bro, like no one would go through that kind of work nowadays. You know what I mean? Like no one would do that. Like it's very rare that you hear people doing that today. Yeah.
Well, I think for two reasons you don't see people doing that today. And I think there is this kind of whole idea around, like predatoriness, I guess, in a sense. And I'm not trying to like label your dad.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
He's seen what he wanted, and he thought it was beautiful and wanted to, contact them. And I've definitely felt that before. I have my own experiences kind of with that. I just trick like, you're trying kind of stuff. So yeah, I think there is kind of that element of it where, maybe men don't even want to be labeled as like a predator, and so they're not, making too much of an effort to go and chase women like that. But I think think the other huge aspect too is, man, you could just go on an app and there's going to be a catalog of beautiful women right there. So, your dad, seeing this one woman he thought was really beautiful is probably, the first one in a while that he saw that he thought was attractive. He's like, I really want to get to know this girl. And so he's searching out like an opportunity to just chat with her and get to know her and stuff like that, trying to find her and a way to contact her. Whereas now it's like, dude, you can just download an app and you swipe on the one you find beautiful and you can start talking to her right there, then and there. It's easy,
Yeah. I'm gonna just leave my camera like this, just for the aesthetic, because it's bothering me. I'm not gonna think about it anymore. Yeah, man. What?
Just like a little green. So I can't see you, which is fine.
What?
Just like a little green icon, like a little.
If you click on it, you should be able to see it on my end. You can see me. Yeah. Can you not see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, now we can. I think you're right. It's just I don't know settings on.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah.
You're just sideways.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess I like kind of lost the track there, but yeah, man, like just how things have evolved, and how over time, even just like, something like that back then that could be like a little odd today. Like if someone like tried that hard to like track you down, it seems odd today, but like in the past, like it would make sense. You know what I mean? Like if you saw someone that you really connected with, like you felt something, like you I don't know, you had a feeling that maybe this is my soulmate or whatever, right? And you tracked them down. That's totally valid back then, but today it would be like kind of like strange, because it's like, why would you know what I mean, just add me on Instagram or something like that, you know what I mean? Like and the taboos and like kind of like the social norms just have changed so much over, even just like 50 years, you know what I mean? Like and I'm sure it'll change even more in the future, and I think a big change, right, has been we have a better understanding of ourselves and also like our past and our history, like we have a better understanding of the universe as a whole and our place in it, right? And so a lot of the things in the past, like a lot of the beliefs, a lot of the ways that we have done things were based on kind of what your community did, right? And what your community beliefs were. And so some, you could be in some communities that were just like I don't know what a good example, but they were just like racist, or like they were sexist or something like that, but now today we have the internet, and the internet actually can be a good thing for that, because now people have access to the information, they have access to different perspectives. They're no longer living in that bubble. And so I feel that now people are more open and more accepting, and it's more of like a fluid thing. I think people's preferences have changed, and just the whole dynamic is just different now. And there's pros and there's cons, right? It's just, I feel like it's just different.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know, I can't see you again, but I'm not too fussed about it. Yeah, like I think you're right. Like I think there's so much more exposure to different ideas and stuff in today's age. Whereas, like 50 years ago, you'd just be exposed to the community that you live in, and that's kind of, and so you do romantically, you kind of take on, or you follow what people did before you romantically and stuff like that. I've seen tons of times in like movies, based in the 50s, like Back to the Future, some stuff, I think there was like Marty McFly's dad or something, the way he like met his wife or whatever, like is kind of similar to your dad's story. And I think that was just like, it was a bit more normal back then. You see a beautiful woman and you kind of do what you do what you can to impress her, and you go and you chase after her and stuff like that. Whereas now there's just way more option, and you kind of are exposed to different ideas through the internet and stuff that's so readily available that people are seeing different ways and to actually be connected to someone romantically, so you're not just before it was like I just see my parents and they had this sort of love story, and that's kind of what you take after. And now it's like it's just so different. The dynamics, there's so many things that have changed, like through online dating. We're exposed to more ideas, and so we just have different ideas of what relationships could look like. We're exposed to different career possibilities and all sorts of stuff, and so the dynamics of actually, long-term partners or long-distance partners and all that. There's so many different dynamics to it now than I think there was historically.
Yeah, and I think a lot. One thing that people don't really consider as well is
more like where they lived. It was probably the only hot woman around for him. He just like work. Now it's like, dude, you can find him anywhere. That's someone you're attracted to. So there's just so much option.
Yeah, yeah. You cut out for a little bit, but you're saying exactly what I was thinking. But as well, like along those lines, people, I feel like, don't really consider also the state of the world and how that also affects like people's mindsets and how the dynamics of relationships and everything like that. Like, people in the past, right? Like, they're not really thinking of like the long term as much, or at least they wouldn't be, especially if you go back like a 1,000 years or whatever. They're only living till like 30 or something like that, right? So they're not even thinking about, oh, like I need to find my partner, and then we go on a date, and then it's like they're just trying to mate and then continue on. There's not as many variables. And so our parents, like we had the World War II, right, which everyone was so relieved, and everyone was just kind of excited to go back to what was normal again, and technology was just like evolving. We had this industrial revolution, so people were making money, and then the whole mindset was just like, let's start a family, let's have a life, let's enjoy ourselves, and everyone was on that kind of wave. And so it was really exciting, and there wasn't like all this, like people just didn't like people. There wasn't as much drama. I feel like, like people, it was just simple in that sense, where everyone was like, we're just happy to be alive, because we all could have died in the war, right? And so I think now too, people are not really as, in survival, in the same like survival mode. I'm not saying we don't have survival mode, but I feel like survival mode has kind of changed. Like, I think our perception and just our perspective has changed. But I think people have more time now, right? And so the time they have and how they spend their time has kind of changed. And so now they're not as I don't know, they're not as immediate, right? It's like, and they're not so set on a path. Right. I feel like now people kind of struggle with like what's the future going to look like, like that. A lot of people, like they won't even get into relationships, or they won't even, they even might even struggle to like find something stable, right? Because the economy or whatever, like because inflation, right? All that stuff also influences how like relationships are formed today. And I feel like it has caused some, detrimental factors, and I feel like a lot of people struggle in that regard, right?
Yeah, certainly. Like, times have changed too, where you're right. I think there's just like they have more options and stuff too now, and see relationships differently and stuff. Back when our parents were getting together and stuff, like I think they sort of had this idea that you get with a partner and you just start a family, and then you just live supporting that family. And I think people are taking more intensive lives now too, where people aren't thinking like that necessarily. They're thinking more, I guess, like they want to live an independent life for longer while they're younger, and then get with somebody later on, or they're trying to live in an independent life and continue dating. And so that turns into long distance relationships, and it turns into short situationships and stuff. But I do think you do see some people too that, like, with some of the economical struggles that our generation has living in Canada, living where we are now, especially as of late with inflation going up and stuff like that too. I think you do see certain like elements of, people, just even for me, like I'm like, man, it would be nice to have a partner because things would be a lot more affordable for myself if I was, living incomes instead of one. And of course, you eat more food with a partner, you might have to pay a little bit more for a large or like a single bedroom apartment or something. But it does become more affordable having just two incomes instead of one. And I think you might see some of that, like, the couples that have stuck through, maybe even just for that reason, just because it makes things a little bit easier. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your like just general thoughts on like relationships, and like what do you think people are experiencing today? Like what are some issues that people have, and what are some like maybe realizations that you've had, or like some lessons you learned?
Maybe I'll just speak for myself more so, in that, I'm kind of the situationship god, I think, at this point in my life, without intent at all. But I think for me personally, there is this kind of subconscious element that exists in my mind of maybe there's somebody better. I kind of look for perfection in a romantic partner, and nobody's perfect, and I'm not perfect. And it's funny too because I seek it in romantic relationships, but I don't really seek it in friendships. I take my friends as they are, and I love them as they are. And I've got lifelong friends, that aren't perfect, and I put up with their shit, and they drive me nuts sometimes. But I think that's how a romantic one should be as well. Is you just accept. Obviously there's some traits that you want maybe a partner to have, and you want to be attracted to them as well and stuff. But I think it's also just love in general is loving people as they are, loving the world as it is. And I think, when it comes to an issue that today's generation faces in dating, is this element of seeking perfection in the romantic partner, trying to get the romantic partner to fit a box, and if they don't, there's going to be someone else out there that will. This idea in their head that there's somebody better, somebody more perfect, somebody that's going to fit this box better. And even I've got a friend, actually, we were talking a little bit the other day about relationships and stuff, and he's been with his girlfriend for quite some time. I do believe one day they're going to get married. I keep bugging with him about that joke. He's in no rush. They're just strongly in love and just connected and chilling. But he said, he did have this idea kind of creep into his mind at one point. He's like, man, like Taylor and I have been together for so long, like, what, maybe there is something better out there, and I immediately shut him down. I was like, bro, shut up. Like, you guys are like so perfect for each other. Like you guys work together, like, and I'm just like, it's you guys. Right. So, yeah, it was just interesting. Even somebody who's been in a relationship still has that idea creep into his mind. And I'm not sure if that's kind of a generational thing or if it's just how the human brain works. But I think, the idea that there's more or somebody else is so.
Yeah. I actually took this course, and it's called the cost benefit analysis. I took this in university, and the whole idea is that every decision you make, right, there's always the cost and benefit, right? So if you make, if you're like, I'm going to go with this person, that means that you're choosing, by choosing that person, you're omitting all the other people, right? And so you're always going to be wondering like, oh, what am I missing out on, And that also brings me to the idea of, what is like the definition of a romantic relationship? I think a lot of people, when they think of like, a romantic relationship, they just think of sex, right? A lot of people, they think I'm dating someone, or I'm in a relationship with someone if we're having sex, and that's all it is. I think that's changed, that's evolved, but some people still think that. Some people think, okay, if I can sleep with this person, that means I'm with them, or like, that consummates our relationship. And so that's like kind of what our relationship revolves around, right? And then there's other people who like they don't think about it at all, which it seems strange for people, but there's like people that are like asexual, there's people that are like what is it, like they're attracted to intellect, like that's actually a thing. There's all these different words now, I don't know them all, but there's like poly, you can be like poly, just like you're attracted to all kinds of people or whatever. I think that's what it is. But yeah, I think like on the lines of like people are understanding themselves better and understanding kind of the role we play as humans and all these different nuances. There's actually this song, I was going to bring this up. It's Tyler, the Creator song. I don't know if you heard it. It's like Darling I. Have you heard that one?
No.
Okay, well, he essentially is talking about how he keeps falling in love, right? That's the theme of the song. He's like, darling, I keep falling in love. It's the lyrics. And
yeah.
So, but the thing is he's falling in love with people for all different kinds of like reasons. So some person that he could fall in love with for like their personality, right? And it's like other person, he falls in love with their creativity, right? And another person, he's really attracted to them, like intimately. And then someone else is like, like they play sports together. You know what I mean? And for some reason, like humans, like we talked about this on the other podcast, but we talked about how humans like to dissect things. We like to organize things because like back 1,000 years, it's easier like that. It's easier to just be like, okay, this person's with that person. This is going on here. And, when we speak on things, it's easier to organize our thoughts and just conceptualize our communities just by simplifying, right? Because if we just like try to philosophize everything, it just becomes messy and, you can't really get anything done, right? And so I feel like, and along those lines, like, if we only simplify things, then it can cause issues as well. Because then, when it comes down to these nuanced things of like, well, maybe a relationship is more fluid than just, having one partner that we just have sex together and then we have a kid and blah, blah, blah. It's like, and I don't talk to anyone else and this and that, right? I think the AI quote from before, right, when it talks about like toxic relationships, I think, and also isolation, I think it's, if we're talking about the devil, right, the devil, there's all these different, it's definitions of the devil. There's all these different interpretations, but the idea of the devil is essentially self, like self-indulging and self-worship, right? And so if people are getting essentially disconnected from each other, right, and being isolated via games of like the ego, right, or like self-concept. Right. A lot of people, that could also be jealousy, right? Comparison is another, comparison is the thief of joy. It essentially ruins all relationships, right? I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that I don't get jealous, but I'm saying that I feel like there's certain people that I connect with in certain ways. And, when I was with my partner and stuff, we developed like an understanding of how it is, like I don't know where I heard this or whatever, but I heard the concept of having like contracts. You ever heard this? Right.
Okay. Yeah.
This is a new concept for me. It's more like an emotional intelligent type tool, where you essentially lay down what makes you feel uncomfortable, right, with your partner, and you say, okay, this is our contract, right? And if you break this contract, then we have a discussion or whatever, right? Whatever it is. But at least like you're not gonna discredit your partner's feelings. You're not gonna invalidate your partner's feelings. But at the same time, you have to also, have a healthy community of people that you're talking to, right? You can't just I don't know, there's examples of like abusive relationships where the partner just doesn't let the partner talk to anyone, right? And it's a way to like keep control in that relationship. And I'm not saying everyone does that in an abusive way, but I'm just saying that how that can become toxic, you know, because then you are not getting different perspectives, you're not getting support, you know what I mean? And so you're kind of falling into the devil's tricks. It's ultimately what I'm saying.
Yeah, so you're saying that like I guess through polyamory, like where you date multiple people and stuff, if only one of the two parties in a relationship is doing that, then the other one kind of gets left in isolation and doesn't have the support.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you have a relationship with someone, right? When you begin, I should really explain this, but when you start a relationship with someone, and whatever that is, right? Like you should talk about how you define it, right? In the other episode, me and Shane talk about how you can have the same word, but you can have different definitions, right? So this is what we call essentially the matrix, right? And this is what keeps us isolated, is because we go about our lives, you know, we go about our relationships thinking the other person thinks the same thing about a certain, word. They have the same definition as us, but someone could have a completely different idea of what a relationship is, right? So someone could be poly, right? But you never talk to that person about it, right? And so you're getting your feelings hurt because you didn't even know this person was poly, but like that's on you because you didn't communicate with this person. That's what I'm saying. It's like when you meet someone and you connect and you like them, make sure that you have the same definition for the same word. Right. So you talk about, okay, this is what my relationship looks like, or like my conceptions, and you don't have to set it in stone, right? Like, cause you're still figuring out, cause you learned it from your parents or from your, media that you watched as a kid. Like I remember, bro, like I had this funny story, but I watched like High School Musical, and I swear, like I tried to do the thing where the guy like puts a necklace on her. I tried to do that thing, bro. It was the most awkward experience of my life, bro. I would literally I was like, close your eyes and turn around. I tried, and she was like, what's going on? Like, she was like so confused. I was like, oh, like I'm just trying to give you a necklace, like, and bro, like, but I learned from media, bro. I learned how to form relationships through like TV and stuff. And so, clearly that thing that I watched like didn't make any sense in the context of what was going on. You know what I mean? Like I was totally, it was just totally off.
It's funny. Yeah, dude. But it's interesting too. I kind of had similar experiences before where I was watching movies and stuff too, and I get these ideas in my head. I'm like, that'd be kind of a cool like, not trick. Yeah, maybe trick. I guess like a way to riz. Like, so that's some good riz. Like Troy Bolton doing with the necklace or whatever. That's what you did. And you try and make it happen in real life, and then the chick hasn't, like, she just, it just goes completely different because she hasn't seen the movie, or she just has a different idea of what's going on. Maybe she got scared, man. You're like, close her eyes and turn around.
Yeah, she was like, what's going on? What are you trying to do to me? Yeah.
So it is an interesting, like, this idea that you're bringing in where certain words can have different meanings, and people might have different ideas of a romantic relationship. And so you should kind of, I like to call it boundary setting, maybe not like contract making with your partner, but like boundaries. I think that's huge. I think that's so important. Like communication is really, really important. I think it's weird. It seems more important in romantic relationships than friendships. I think friendships, for whatever reason, you just get it for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but romantic relationships, especially at the beginning, like it's good to have conversation of, what you guys want to be or what it to look like and stuff, which sometimes makes it awkward.
Yeah.
Good to have, I definitely have ups where I had different ideas of what I wanted a relationship to be, or girls got mixed up with what they thought we were doing and stuff like that, and it just turns a bit messy, so I've got my feelings hurt. I probably hurt some girls because of that, and I just try and always be really communicative in all my relationships now. Set proper boundaries and expectations, I guess.
Yeah. Expectations is a good word too. It's like, what do you expect from this? Like, I don't know. I find like, you kind of go through the same checklist. I don't know about you, but I find you meet someone new, and you want to get a kind of a sense of it, and like what they're after, and like what they're essentially like looking for in their life, like you said, some people like they want to share their experience with someone else, and have that, like someone who's like their second half, to put it poetically. But everyone's like in a different stage of their life too. So some people are just like, hey, like I just want to go see a movie with someone, whatever, and get to know them, blah blah, whatever. So yeah, like knowing that as well, and like kind of knowing that everyone's in a different place is like is important, right? Because then you're not getting, what is it, like you're not on a leash, because sometimes you're like holding on to something where they're not emotionally available at all, a lot of people, I find that that's a pretty common too, is that people kind of are like not like emotionally there, and so they end up just kind of like hurting the other person, unconsciously or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too. Like, I kind of zoned out actually a little bit as you were explaining that, but I was just thinking of maybe some of my past relationships, and having just where it went when I didn't set expectations, when we didn't talk about what we expected from the other person, and just how awkward it gets sometimes, really, like. And so maybe that's like a big problem that, like, even today's generation faces. Yeah, I mentioned earlier how there's always this idea that there could be something better out there, but things just get confused because, especially today, man, like, I don't know how you find it, but I moved back, like, being back in Victoria on Vancouver Island, there's so much polyamory going on, and being on, like I am right now, outing myself here, but there's a lot of polyamory in this city, or I don't know if it's Vancouver Island, but it was not like this where I previously was, and it's really interesting just because it's something that, like, I've never been in that type of relationship. I'm not judging or anything, but I just don't really know how to navigate it. And I had a girl, we were chatting with, got along really well. We chatted for like 2-3 hours, just texting back and forth straight. It was great. And like, this girl's cute. It was kind of cool to get on well. I'd see in her bio that she had like polyamory as one of her like things, but it didn't. Usually I find people specify in their bio after that they follow up with like, I'm in a relationship, and it just didn't specify. So it's like, okay, maybe she believes in polyamory, but she's not in a relationship. After 3 hours of chatting, she mentioned, okay, like, I'm in this poly relationship, and it was really interesting. I was like, okay, so you have a partner, and I had to like make sure I understand. So I was asking these questions. I was like, okay, like what happens when you meet somebody else? And she was like, well, you just like, I'm okay to hang out with people and, like communicate with them, like platonically. And I was like, okay, like happens first. And she was like, well, then I have to talk to my partner, whether it's like, okay, and then we go from there, sort of thing. And I was like, wow, that's like really interesting. But I just had to ask these questions to make sure I understand something so new for me to navigate. I guess where I'm going with this, though, is that people really do have different ideas and expectations of what a relationship looks like. This girl was polyamorous. Like, I can have as many, in her eyes, I don't know if she labels them as boyfriends or what, but, she doesn't believe in just having one partner. It sounded like, if she connected well enough with me that she could have two boyfriends. Wasn't for me. I ended up telling her, sorry, I'm not interested. It's too much for me to navigate, but thank you for letting me know, and we can just, stop talking to her. But yeah, it's really interesting. I find there's a lot of that in Vancouver Island.
Yeah. I want to say that, like, there's going to be all kinds of people like listening to this show, and this show is like, it's super open. I mean, if you're not an open person, like, you might be kind of, you'll be like, what are you guys talking about, bro? But yeah, I know. I don't want to make things super divisive, you know what I mean? Because certain, like, I don't judge people, whatever people want to do, whether you completely just utterly believe in monogamy. I don't want to single you out. That's what I'm saying, is that like me and Jesse, super open guys. We don't ever like, I say like, we don't ever collapse the wave function. That's the way I put it, is we don't ever want to make things certain, because we live in an ever-changing universe, and there's always new variables that are, we might learn something if we just, question and be like, well, there could be something that I could gain that, is beneficial to my life, so I've definitely, explored just different ideas and different dynamics, and you just be curious and you learn, you learn about how people see the world, and just their experience, and another point too is like, you don't see a lot of depictions of like what, like you see relationships, but like I don't think I've ever seen really a depiction of like a poly dynamic. Like I've never seen that, and if I have, I haven't seen it really functional, but my I guess result, or like my conclusion with that whole thing, is that you need like emotional intelligence, and you need to do it in like a pretty mature way, like if you're just like going around not really thinking about your actions and stuff like that, you know what I mean, like you're just stepping on people's toes and like crossing boundaries because you didn't communicate, that's where it falls apart. But I feel like if you are in a state where it works and you communicate and everything's flowing, and like you're getting positive benefits from all different sides, then I think it's great. I think you'll probably grow more than anything else. Like relationships are what cause you to grow more, it's always just mirroring back how you are, like especially if you're intimate with someone, bro, you're gonna heal. Like you're gonna heal, bro. Like, so I think just avoiding, that whole topic and avoiding poly entirely, I don't think that's 100% healthy, you know what I mean? I just at least keep an open mind. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I just want to add to actually what you just said too, like, because again, I don't know who's going to be listening to this. If you listen to this, thank you, appreciate it, I guess, whatever. But yeah,
so much haters, bro.
Listen to this.
Yeah, just ignore the haters, bro.
No, but I just want to second that, like, Toph and I are really open, loving guys, and we're down about everybody's experience in this life. We don't live our lives, like there's no right way to live a life. There's no right way to be in a relationship. And I'm not saying, I just said to this girl in particular, like polyamory at the moment seemed like it was too much for me to navigate at the time, but I'm totally open to hearing about it, learning about it. And yeah, I think, there's tons of ways to be in relationships. Not one way is right or wrong. And so if poly, like you said, like, it's probably works really well for some people. I firmly believe that like love is this kind of just thing that everybody has, and so I think love can be shared with multiple people in a romantic way, all at the same time, simultaneously. I think it's totally possible. I just don't know. Yeah, for me, not right now at my point, like this point in my life, but totally open to hearing about it, and we don't judge either. Like whatever floats your boat. So.
Yeah, this is okay. Did you know that there's like different words for love in different languages and different cultures? So you could say the word love, right? Going back to what we're talking about with definitions, right? Like you could say love and someone could have a completely different definition of what love is, right? And in different cultures they have the way I look at it is love is, you ever seen Love on the Spectrum? different spectrum. But it's funny, bro. My one friend, he used to say he's on the spectrum, and like he was talking like frequencies, but like when he said it, like everyone just thought like, oh, this guy's like he's got the tism, bro. But that's a whole other thing. Yeah, love on the spectrum. There's different frequencies of love, right? So there's like base frequency, which is like lust, right? And then there's like creativity, right? So like lust is like red, which makes sense. Red lips, you know what I mean? arousing. It just pops out at you. It's like a red apple, you know what I mean? And then you have orange.
Yeah.
You have orange, which is like bright, like the sun. It's like
Yeah.
it's like friendships, creativity. Like love of creation. You know what I mean? And then there's like empowerment, right? So when you empower someone, that's like loving them. You know what I mean? So that's yellow.
Yeah.
That's bright. And then you have green, which is like love of like nature. You know what I mean? Love of your environment. These are like the environmentalists, right? So like love of like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Love of like create, like, love of earth, that kind of thing, love of your body, that type of shit. And then you have, I guess love, expression, like any sort of expression is love as well. You know what I mean? Like just communication, like talking, and all of these different frequencies obviously play a role. You have like intuition, I guess you could call, is like is type of love. It's like listening at like a very deep level. It's a type of love. Like when you listen deeply, you listen intently. That's like a love. And then I guess you have the crown chakra, which is like accepting, or like the crown is just like connection with all things. You know what I mean? It's like just openness, just being completely like accepting of everyone, and everything, and just being connected to everything. Like that's and having your place in the universe. You know what I mean? Like that's a different type of love as well. But all of these different these frequencies, it's just one word that says love. But in different cultures, they have different dynamics for each, like for each frequency, which to me it makes more sense. If you had like, oh, I love you, like as a brother, like that's a different, it's different than saying like I love you as a romantic partner. Like it's different, but we don't speak that way.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool idea actually to talk about. Like, because you're right. You're using the same language when you speak to people. Like, I love you. And I say to you all the time, I love you, and then I'll say it to my mom. And then I might say it to a romantic partner too, but it kind of means different things. You're right, and I've never heard that before. The idea of love on a spectrum. But it's a really cool
Everyone's gonna start saying that now. They're gonna be like, "Yo, love on a spectrum, bro." Yeah.
Bro. Yeah, who's your homie? What's his name?
I'm not gonna name drop him. I'm gonna get him on the podcast, and you guys will know. You'll know. Yeah. I'm not gonna.
Well, shout out
to him. Yeah.
On the spectrum.
Shout out to him, man.
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. Yeah, people can catch on to that. Start being like, "Well, I love you at the level of yellow."
Yeah.
I love you, yellow much. Like, that's cool. Hey, I'm actually, before I even ask you this question, my phone's at 8%, so give me like 1 hot minute. I gotta try and Jimmy rig something to charge my to talk. My cord doesn't work actually, so that's kind of a funny motion to make. But
yeah, first world problems. Sick.
Yeah.
All right, we're just gonna do an intermission. Da na 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 na. Na 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 na.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put the phone down like this.
Yeah, it's been fun so far, bro. This is awesome. I feel like I'm glad to be able to like put all this mess that I have going on in my mind like somewhere. I feel like sometimes it just gets jumbled around. And being able to like put it out there and like realize, like I don't know, when you talk to someone, you just realize like you're not as crazy as you thought you were. That's the ultimate cure, man. If you're like on the edge, and you're just like going through a hard time, just like talk to your boys, man. Like that's always been like the ultimate cure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just literally just base level. Don't even have to talk about anything, you could just be like playing a video game or just fucking whatever, but just chilling, man, and just like being grounded in something. Yeah, getting out of the place of thoughts, man. There's one thing like we talked about on the other episodes, but I feel like you know, in terms of definitions, right? It's like these we almost see relationships and we see like our dynamics. We always like kind of filter it through our thoughts. You know what I mean? It's like it's strange to think about, but you know, something could happen, right? And instead of just like being in the moment and like responding to whatever has happened, you think about it, right? Like it's pretty common, right? Like we think about what happened or like what's happening, right? Like you're in a relationship. Oh, she touched my leg, and you're like thinking about what that means, and you're trying to, oh, what do I do? And like you're having this dialogue in your head. You know what I mean? Like you're like, if you've ever been like kind of on a date or whatever, you're trying to figure it out. You're young and you're not sure what's going on. You're always kind of at a veil between like what's actually going on. You know, like you're not actually like present with what's happening. You're like kind of like a step away from reality. You know, it's like you're not actually flowing with the dance. You're like, trying to intellectualize everything, analyze everything, but that's not actually like connecting to reality. It's not actually connecting to the person. I feel that was one thing that I realized, and then when I realized, I was like, yo, like I'm actually not actually like living my life. You know what I mean? I'm living my life through a lens. At kind of a distance from what's going on. That was a huge like awareness for me.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I missed a lot of what you just said as I was trying to get my Jimmy rig set up.
Yeah, no, we're talking about the spectrum of love, right? And I was just saying, like, how, the word love, someone could say that, and then you are intellectualizing what that is, right? Like someone could say, and then you have an idea of what it is, and then essentially you filter that, and then you act, right? Rather than like being present with whatever that thing is, without that that kind of level.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like you're
like the feedback loop of having to understand it first.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like
you just understand.
I feel like this might just be my perspective and how my perspective has changed over time. Like it's different for everyone, but I feel like from my experience, when I'm connected to the moment as much as I can be, right? I'm not saying I'm doing it all the time, but what I strive for is that when we have our eyes open, our ears open, we can feel the vibrations, we can feel the surfaces, we can feel the weight of our body on the whatever chair we're sitting on, or if we're driving, you know what I mean? Like we're actually present with all of our senses, right? And we're actually not like thinking about what we're feeling or we're listening to, or but actually like directly tapped into that. I think that state, also known as like flow state, right? That's what like athletes strive for, is when you're not think, because when you think, right, you're actually a step behind what is actually going on, right? If you're thinking about, oh, how do I handle the soccer ball, you know what I mean? Like you're not actually handling the soccer ball. You're now like a millisecond behind what you could be doing, you know what I mean? And so you're not actually present with the information, because now you're behind. You're a step behind, right? I think people do that in relationships too, is that they're thinking about what's happening rather than actually being present with what it is, because you're going to naturally know what is going to happen, because I think if you want to talk about Star Wars, you want to talk about the Force, you want to talk about this flow, you could also call it the Tao. I don't know if you've seen Mandalorian, The Way. This is the way, right? That's like kind of a play off of
I haven't.
Oh man, it's great. It's great. That also goes into the idea of like values and the way how people do things and stuff like that. This is the way. This is like how our ancestors live. You know what I mean? This is our cultural values, all that stuff. But the way in Taoism is essentially like this eternal flow. It's like a river. And you could say it originates somewhere, which could be like the Big Bang, wherever you want to think about it. And then so this flow is happening. I feel like we're all connected to that. Like we're connected to the force, and that it's what connects all the atoms, and it's it's gravity. You know what I mean? Like this space time, whatever continuum you want to call it. Not to intellectualize it, but I'm saying we can connect to it. I think when we connect to it, our relationships and just everything flows. You know what I mean? Like that's the middle way. Is when it's not too hot, it's not too cold. It's the what is it? The not the Bearstein Bears. The Goldilocks, bro. Goldilocks zone.
Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
The Goldilocks zone. That's how the Earth was formed. You know what I mean? Like if it wasn't in this, like people don't think about this. To have our life right now, this gift that we have, right? Everything has to be in the middle, everything has to be in the balance, and so again, in relationships, it's the same way. It's just a dance. You have the when you're dancing with a partner, right? You have the lead role, and then you have the nurturing, the following and supportive role. You know what I mean? And again, that doesn't necessarily mean like the supportive role versus the the lead role is like people are gonna label it or whatever, but you could have this dynamic where that dynamic shifts. You know what I mean? You could be in a certain relationship where you have a male partner that's supportive, stay at home dad. That's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like everyone's different, and I feel like everyone again is connected to that flow and to that Tao. And so there's a reason why you have certain pulls in your life. You have a certain calling in your life because you, like, I don't know, this is kind of getting deep, but I feel like everyone has a specific archetypal position or role, right? That they play. That's why, their genetics are the way that it is, right? And so I think the more that we get to know ourselves in that way, and we get to know like, hey, like I gravitate towards this, I'm really good at this, like this is what works for me in my relationships and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like if I just work with that, and work with my partner and kind of play that balance and play that back and forth game, and get a sense of it, and not trying to think so much about, am I doing it right? Like, is this how it's supposed to be? Because when you quiet that voice, you ultimately lead to that knowing, like you have that sense within you that, yeah, this is exactly where I need to be. This is exactly how it's supposed to be unfolding, whether or not you want to believe that, but that's what I believe. And that's been working for me in my life. So.
Yeah. I'm curious. So like, you kind of talk about this idea of flow state and just getting into this state where you're not necessarily like conscious. So it's this feedback loop of receiving the information and then making or taking action from there, like your brain comprehending it and then taking action from there. But you're just in it, and it's like when you're snowboarding down a mountain, you just are free flowing and you're going and you're in that flow state. And you're attaching this idea of flow state to relationships and not necessarily like overthinking them or complexing them in your head, but just you're there and it's just flowing and things are happening very naturally. Does that kind of follow that correctly? Like what you're saying?
Yeah. And I mean, like, again, everyone's experiences can be different, but for me, when I meet someone and I don't have like, even when I do these podcasts, like we have a general idea, we've had an experience, we've lived life. And so obviously our brain's going to concoct these ideas and we're going to, flow and stuff. But ultimately, like I don't script things, and I feel like in relationships to have that spark, like usually the relationships when they start on a more like in a more organic way, and we are kind of just flowing. I find it works the best, you know, because it's you keep that excitement, right?
Where do you think, my kind of follow-up question to that was like, where do you think that comes from? How do you think people kind of get into that state in a romantic relationship? Do you think it really it takes a connection of two like characteristics where they fit together? Like, you know, you maybe go to the same coffee shop, you bump into somebody and you kind of create a friendship from that? Or where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm like a pro with this stuff, you know what I mean? I'm just saying like what my experience is, and I find, it's changed a lot, right? And so I'm not going to say that, like, I feel like I was born in the wrong generation, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm an old soul. I feel like I relate more to simple times and stuff like that. So for me, I'll say like I struggle with anxiety. I feel like a lot of people do, and so I'm not just gonna go up to a random person in a coffee shop and talk to them. Like at least if it naturally happens, I do. Like if a conversation's going on, and I feel like I want to contribute, I will. And I've done that. And it usually is fine. But when I'm, if I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, what am I gonna say to this girl? Like what, and then it just becomes jumbled, and then it sounds awkward, and they ultimately don't really connect with it. They don't vibe with it, because it's like the energy that you're stifling your energy. And I find when, you are kind of in that flow state, right? And it's like the flow state kind of comes like, in sports, you got to warm up your body. You got to get in tune and like get connected and like kind of train your mind and body to be in unison. And so it kind of takes time to get into that state. But then once you're in that state, like your whole life just becomes like you know what I mean? And things just kind of connect and flow. And then next thing you know, you got invited to a party, whatever, and then you're not even thinking about it the whole time. And then you end up meeting someone, you talk to them, and like you're just kind of in this frame, in this state that like everything's just kind of flowing, right? And it does, I feel like when people listen to this, they're like, well, I don't really like, I feel like that's really far away from maybe where I'm at. Like a lot of people might be like, well, I don't feel like I can go up to and get to that state right away. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like super open, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's hard, man. I've been there. I don't speak a lot about like my times of like, exploration, you know what I mean? I don't know if people relate. I don't know how many people relate, but I feel like some people go through like, it's hard to go through times of, what do you say, existential like crisis, and then still try to maintain, whatever in your life, and so if you are going through something like that, I don't know who, like, there's probably gonna be a small percentage of people. I don't know how many, but if I can speak to one person, right? The one thing I would say is that things evolve, okay? Whatever state you're in now, right? Like whether that's your anxiety, whether that's depression, whatever state, that's temporary, okay? And there is, whether you know it or not, there's, at least for me, there's a certain characteristic to it. So whether that's, the winter season that's bringing upon winter depression, you know what I mean? Whether that's, you got out of a relationship, so now you feel like your whole life is falling apart. On that note, also, those moments actually, in hindsight, were like my aha moments. You know what I mean? Like when relationships didn't work out and I felt like my life was falling apart, and I had to look at myself and I had to like, actually be like, what the fuck, man? What am I doing? Those moments were like the moments where I was like, yo, I got to get my shit together. I got to figure this shit out. And when I got out of that state and I look back, I was like, I'm so glad that I was depressed, because if I was happy through that, I never would be as happy as I am now, because I never would have like changed my behavior to allow myself to like actually achieve these different states, you know. And so that's what I would say. If you're struggling like with, you know, talking to people or whatever, know that it's not going to last. Okay, that's the first thing. You can change, you know, and there's small things you can do, you know, and it, you know, it might seem daunting at this time, but it really is. It's about a process. Okay, I feel like a lot of people do get caught up on like, okay, I need to get this done today. You know, I need to be able to like go up to that girl and you know, be completely charismatic and figure this out now, just because like instant gratification, you know. But what I've found my journey, you know, I don't know about you, but I feel like framing things in a way where you have like an ultimate goal. Obviously, you have a trajectory, right? But then you have like small little stepping stones, which is like, you know, like I was saying, like you get warmed up before you play, you know, and then you get into the flow state. So having some small goals. So it's like, I'm going to go outside for a walk. I'm going to call a friend. You know what I mean? I'm going to journal. Even like not, you don't have to like go like, I'm going to walk for 30 minutes. Go for like like put on your shoes, you know? I think I heard this in a podcast or something like that, where it's like, just put on your shoes, bro. You know? And then once your shoes are on, then, okay, well, now open the door. That's not so hard. All right. Go take a step outside. You know what I mean? So that's what I would say, you know, and anything, if you're struggling, or if you just like, you know, don't know how to take the next step, like just literally take one step and then notice how you feel, and then you can adjust, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think what you just said, those are really good, like, life advice. It's just life tips for anything. You could apply that to anything. Taking just the smallest bit of action and analyzing from there, going from there. It's like, I don't know. I always use the analogy. Will Smith said it before, but he's like bricklaying. Like, he had to build this wall for his dad. And he was just taking it brick by brick, step by step, small increments that make a whole wall in the end, you know, in the finish. I think when we get back to just being in the flow of things and stuff too, you know, you mentioned how athletes, they want to be in the flow state when they're in the game or come competition time. But there's all this preparation work that they do before that competition actually comes. Like, you know, Olympians, they train for years and years to then compete in the Olympics. And, you know, it's just, and then, you know, for a downhill ski jump person or something, it might be 30 seconds where they're actually competing, but they've done years of practice and work for that 30 seconds of success, hopefully, you know, in that flight during that competition time. I think it's interesting too, like, you could almost maybe, and this is just an interesting like thing to think about, I think, but like practicing, you know, good communication, so that when you're in a relationship, you just have it, you know, practicing, you know, your love languages, so that when you're in a relationship, it's just more natural and you're not fighting that. It's just more flowing. Like, I think maybe even with relationships, there's some sort of practice that needs to be done that people just aren't doing before. And then so they get relationships and they're not yet ready to be in one, and it's not flowing the way it's supposed to be. I just thought it was interesting. It came to my mind as you were talking about like athletes preparing for a competition to get into that flow state. And then when we talk about relationships, I was like, wait, maybe there's something that I've never even thought about before, that maybe, you know, things take work and preparing yourself beforehand. Like, you really have to be ready for one, almost.
That's a good point too. I feel like a lot of people, they'll be like, well, I don't want to get into a relationship because I don't feel ready for it. But actually that's actually a good time to get into a relationship, is when, you know, you kind of feel like, oh, I don't know if I can, you know, jump into a relationship. Like, again, if you're not emotionally available, then don't. But if you feel like maybe like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, it depends on the partner, obviously. I feel like in our society, everything like is like, going back to what we're saying about options and perfectionism. I feel like everyone's like has these high expectations, and we don't ever allow ourselves to be like human, you know, and like make mistakes. And, you know, so I, you know, for me, I was like laid a foundation of like, you know, we are humans, and, you know, we're we're here to like learn and grow together, you know, and we don't have to have it figured out now, but having that communication and kind of having that understanding that this is how it's going to be is like, hey, I'm a flawed person, you're a flawed person, and then we can, you know, talk about it and figure it out. And like, you know, you can talk to your boys and give feedback as well, but ultimately if you just jump into it, like you're going to figure it out. Like if you struggle to communicate, you're going to learn, bro, especially if you care for this girl, bro, you're going to learn, you know. And so don't just think like I have to be perfect before I jump in and then notice how the relationship actually gives you that support, you know, especially if it's the right person. You'll actually feel energized to change, you know what I mean? You'll be like, I have a reason, like this girl motivates me, you know what I mean? And there's all kinds of things around that. But yeah, like don't limit your happiness. Like why would you stop yourself from being happy in a relationship, you know? Just because you don't feel like you're enough or whatever, or like not ready, you know?
I agree. I want to add this. You put the idea of like values earlier, and I guess just to start off kind of this topic of conversation, like how do you think values have shifted from when our parents were younger to what they are now, and how that affects relationships?
So I you know, I don't know how deep I want to go, but I do have some thoughts on this. I don't know. It's up to you. Do you want to go deep on it, or do you want like a short answer here?
You know, as I asked the question, I think we kind of answered the first aspect of it first. Like, I think we kind of labeled out some values that maybe our parents had, but I think maybe we could touch more on, but like what people have value now in relationships and what that looks like and how it affects them.
Okay.
Go as deep as you want. Just answer the question.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just say one thing that I always run into is that so when we're talking about like love. Just love on the spectrum. I'm gonna bring that back up. But when we're talking about love on the spectrum, right? The first level, where I was talking about, you know, how love is, you know, the color red, right? Red is like lust, but it's also safety, right? So it's like, and the thing is too, it's like kind of dual in that nature, where once you get safety, then you can get, you know, the other side of the coin. So I feel like a lot of like the values kind of remains the same, but it also kind of changes where I feel like in the past we kind of had a bit more safety, you know, like in our parents' generation, maybe it was easier to get, you know, security. Things were a bit more certain, right? So that was more safety, right? Because, you know, I'm sure I can get a job, I'm sure I can get a house, I'm sure I can raise a family. Like, you know, the probability of that happening was really high, right? And so that gave you more security, and then people were more open, right? And so it kind of, you got out of this survival mode, and then now you're more into like a thriving, let's build a family type of thing, right? And so obviously that's going to be the value, right? And that's going to be kind of the backbone for everything else. So to get to the different frequencies, the different, you know, the different stages or levels or whatever, right? You know, it's going to be different for everyone. So everyone's going to be on a different place, you know? But I find now you can see everyone doing these different little things, but it's ultimately stemming from the same, you know, safety principle, right? So nowadays, it seems as though like people are choosing all these options because, oh, if I get rejected, then, you know, that's damaging to that's, you know, like, it's like when you get validation, that's really like, it makes you feel secure, you know what I mean? So that, you know, gives you that safety of like, okay, I'm in, you know, people appreciate me, I'm going to get my food, you know. It's very tribal, right? Because it's like when you're validated, when people accept you, then they're going to, you know, support you, right? And then you're going to get food, and you're going to survive, and then you can procreate, right? And so that's what I would say like now, it like the way it's evolved has just become based on like kind of what has been happening. You know, I feel like if you look at COVID, right? COVID just kind of pushed everything even more online, you know, because people were like, well, I can't even like go outside. Like, it's, you know, they're telling us we can't, you know, and we can't even communicate face to face anymore. We got to wear masks. Yeah. So we have to, you know, so we're always still looking for the safety. We're still looking for that ground zero. But then now we're like looking for different ways. And so I feel like all of these different things that emerged, right? To my point, it's the same values, but it's just we're looking for it in different places, and it's kind of come out in different ways. Is that like kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, you just answered it however you want to you wanted to, and so that's great. I guess what you're trying to say then is like safety is a huge value that people have always kind of had when it comes to relationships. They want to feel safe in a relationship.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I mean, again, like, I didn't maybe answer the part of like how it's changed as much, but I feel like yeah, it's still like the same thing. It's just kind of evolved. But do you have like an idea, like, do you have a perspective on like how you feel like it's changed?
Yeah, so I agree actually with what you said. It's something I never thought about, but the value of feeling safe in a relationship, I think, is something that, you know, we all probably want to some degree. Safety is just such a important value in living, staying safe, keeping alive. And so I think it's just something that like naturally humans all want in a relationship as well, for sure. So I agree with you there. I think in terms of like what's different today is maybe that's why you kind of get so much polyamory or long distance relationships, is I think that people also value a bit of maybe a bit more independence and freedom and liberty. I think, with someone, or at least how it looked traditionally, is you do spend a lot of time together and you're codependent and you're living together and doing activities together and probably have the same friend groups and financially are doing things together. And I think, in the world we live in now, I think social media has kind of opened up a lens for people to see where they can really take like control over their lives and live, like, it's very liberating, and they can live very independently if they want. And I think, how it's changed is just that's why you get polyamorous relationships, is I can be with you, but I can also be with Brad over here or something, and Brad offers me this, but you offer me that, and that's why I want to be with both of you. But it's taking control of their own lives. So I want both these things that both these offer me, or even long distance relationships. Like, why you get long distance relationships too is, we're together and we're in love, but I want to be in Hong Kong, and you want to be in Canada. So, I'll go to Hong Kong and I'll live my life over here and have that freedom to do so, but we're still connected and dating. And I don't think you would really see that traditionally as much. So I think that's kind of how it's changed for sure a little bit. And I think that's why you come up, like, I think that's another reason why there's some struggles with today's relationship stuff too, is that some people have very traditional values and they want to live what it would look like in a 1950s movie where you just get a house and kids and have a dog, white picket fence, and it's all great and you're doing it all together. And I think some people, those people sometimes get together with someone who wants a bit more like travel independence or just career independence or whatever it might be, maybe a bit more ambitious and doesn't see themselves as much of a codependent. So
yeah, well, I think if we look at, again, like what we had access to in the past, you didn't get all of like it was almost like you had a bit more restriction, even just like in what was appropriate, like in the past, there, you as a female, you showed any skin and you were just like ridiculed and shamed, and that also is kind of like that's a restrictive element, right? And that could be associated with some sort of belief, you know what I mean? Some sort of theology, and so I feel like now, like it's kind of this thing where we've kind of pushed back so much because, like, obviously that's wrong to shame someone when someone just, like, it's, they're a human being, and they have the right to express themselves. Sorry, you just cut out.
Just saying, don't want to shame anyone. If they're hurting somebody, different story. But if you just doing what you want to do, not hurting anybody, no shame, you know? And so you're right.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, yeah, it clearly it's a nuance, you know. I like anything, there's levels of nuance, but in general, it's a positive thing that people are more encouraged today to express themselves, whether that's sexually or just like creatively, you know what I mean? And I feel like because now we have a greater understanding, and you know, we have these instruments, we have technology to be able to like learn these things, and so now people have access to, you know, all this information, different perspectives. So now I think the values have kind of changed like that, right? And so it is a positive thing, because now that we have such a, like, it's almost easier now, like just the way the infrastructure is set up, like it's pretty easy to live, bro. Like you can order DoorDash to your front door, you know what I mean? Like you don't gotta fight off animals, and you know, like you don't gotta go forage, like you don't gotta do none of that, bro. Like you know, and our even our parents didn't have the same like same access that we have today, right? And so I feel like that opens us up as well to explore, like we're saying before, like explore kind of different ways of life, different ideas. And so the independence and freedom is a good thing. But I would like to add that there is also the other side of that coin too, where I feel like, you know, the pushback of all these restrictive systems, and I'm not going to get into the details, but I feel like, you know, that have kind of that were created in the past, right? These restrictive systems, like, you know, oh, burn the witch, you know what I mean? It's the same concept, right? But it's kind of evolved. But like we've gone away from that, but to the point where I feel like a lot of us have lost the plot. You know, when we look at young males especially, I feel like young males have kind of lost the plot for what their future looks like. You know what I mean? And so it's the age-old saying that the devil preys on idle hands. And so these kids that don't have, you know, they're not doing not to get, you know, I don't want to like say the devil as like the biblical sense, but I just mean as a metaphorical sense, that like when you're not doing something productive or practical, or like moving your life in a way that's, you know, benefiting your community and your society, then what happens is you pursue pleasure, right? And you pursue instant gratification. You know, you play video games all day, you know, not to point fingers, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, it's all moderation, obviously, but I'm just saying that, I feel like we see it, it's clear that people, and even just the way, you know, we've swung the pendulum so far that now we're kind of coming back to the middle a bit more. You know what I mean? Like, we've gone so far of like restrictive to like so much freedom that we're like, well, everything, you know, like where's like the floor is the ceiling. Like, it's like we don't really know what's holding everything together. You know what I mean? And so I feel like just naturally over time, things are kind of going to balance out. You know, we have liberals in office, we have, you know, conservatives or whatever. Like, not to get political or whatever, I'm just saying it tends to go back and forth, because really ultimately, you know, it's the same bird, just both sides of the different wings, you know, whatever it is. But like, you know, so like the point of like the balance in a relationship, right? It's like the dance. It always comes to the dance of like the different, you know, roles that we're playing. And I feel like it just takes a bit of I don't know, just courage, bro, to like to find your place. You know what I mean? And everyone, I feel like everyone knows deep down, and it just takes a bit to kind of chisel your David, you know. But yeah, man, everyone, like, I feel like over time will get there, you know. And yeah, I don't think that, like, yeah, I don't think that, like, in the yeah, to my point also, like, you're saying like the past versus the future too. It's like there's benefits of the past and there's benefits of the future, but there's also, you know, cons of the past and there's cons of the future. You know what I mean? I feel like we can learn from the past. We can also learn from things happening now, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree for sure. I agree with that statement. And I think too, like a lot of people idolize romantic relationships in the past too and stuff. And I don't think, I didn't 26 years ago, I wasn't alive, but so I don't know what dating was like in the 80s or the 50s or the 1920s. Like, so I can't, I'm just speaking from maybe what I think I know about it. But I'm sure, it wasn't all like it is depicted in the movies as well, with a lot of chivalry and like proper closure and just, I don't know, like the stuff you see in sappy rom-coms or the High School Musical kind of necklace put on from the behind, it's like people idolize that a lot. And I think, you probably still had like, toxic relationships back then too, just like you do today, and you still have chivalry today. You just got to make the effort.
Chivalry is not dead. It's not dead. It just is transformed. Yeah. It is morphed in something different. Yeah.
Like, I made my bed so you can come over and watch Netflix with me.
Yeah.
That's chivalry.
Yeah.
Hey, I watched Sheep. Okay, I'm thinking about you. That's chivalry.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, man. No, that's 100. I feel people need to hear that because I feel like people don't. Again, it's like the same word, different definition. I feel like people they think things need to be a certain way, and I feel like in doing so, you're missing the beauty. You're missing the, if you're holding on too much to the past, and you're missing the beauty of today, Yeah.
Dude. Absolutely. That's facts.
Yeah.
And there's another question. I don't know how much longer.
I'm still waiting for it to happen, dude. I'm still waiting for it to happen. I'm waiting for like, I feel like there's just gonna be moments in this that we like chop up, and like that's gonna be the snippet. I'm still waiting. Like there's gonna be the one that's like in the very end, and people have to like sift through it to get to the very end. They're like, where is the clip that I saw? And like, yeah. I'm like, it's coming. I know it's coming. It's like, yo, yeah. But yeah, go on. What are you gonna say?
Man, it absolutely is, and I'm actually, I'm down to absolutely jump on here again. We'll chat, about other things beyond just relationships. This one was relationship focused, but it's been a good time so far. I don't know. Did you want to talk about OnlyFans today too, and just dive into that a little bit, or?
I feel like we should, just for the memes. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, not to be super.
Sorry, say that again.
Well, I think we should do it for the memes. I don't know. I feel like I see a lot of like it's all over the place, man. Everyone's like either talking about it, they're either on it. You know what I mean? They know someone who's using it. Bro, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, do you have any thoughts? Okay, before we get into it, I want to say I don't want it to be controversial or polarizing. That's the one thing I feel, because it totally is, and I can understand that people like are gonna feel a certain type of way, So I'm just gonna say put that out there, and we're just gonna have a open conversation.
Yeah. What did you call this podcast again? The E and N, right? Or N?
Everything and nothing. Yeah, E and N. Yeah.
Everything and nothing.
Yeah.
Everything. Everything's talked about. Nothing's off the table. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So I like that because when we talk about these topics and stuff like that too, it's like nothing's off the table. We're open here. We want to discuss it, and we want to discuss. Not divide anything like that. Just speaking from our experiences and what we think it is, without really having like
we
an
could
opinion in one way or the other.
We could be completely wrong. Like whatever we say, that's the thing. It's like everyone nowadays is like saying something, you know what I mean? And it's like I don't know. Like unless I've actually lived the life of someone who's like let's say an OnlyFans model, like I can't tell you what your experience is like. You know what I mean? I can only tell you from what I've seen and like what I've observed. Like as much as I can step outside of my experience, which is like impossible because I'm always looking outside of my eyes. You know what I mean? But like I can vicariously experience it, but like I'm not gonna tell you how to live. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess for the listeners out there, like we don't want to create any division. We don't want to create any polarizing opinions or anything like that. We're just talking from our experiences, and it can be very wrong, like Topher said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like. I'm all. You know what? I'll say this to kind of get conversation flowing. Is I'm all for people doing it. Like it is so rad because I think the pornography industry for so long. Why getting the word again? Exploiting is the word I want to use. I think exploiting women in particularly. I think maybe I don't know. Maybe everyone gets exploited, but women definitely get exploited and have been exploited in the pornography industry for a long time and still are. But I think OnlyFans is like a really awesome way for women to kind of take control over that and sell their bodies and actually earn. I don't know how it works monetarily, if they get all the money or what. Like surely OnlyFans, the company, gets a little percentage of that, and if they have helping them out with editing, see a lot more of the money from it and do it how they want to do it. I think it's great. I think it's so great. Have their own profile set up, get people to pay for them. And even if you're not a woman, just anybody taking control and ownership of their own body and selling it the way they want. I think it's great.
And obviously, to that point, what I'm going to say is that I know that there's going to be people that are going to say, well, like the body's not a commodity. You know what I mean? The body, whether that is made in the image of God, not to use a charged word, but I don't know what other word to use in that context. Made in the image of the creator, whatever. And so the body is sacred. And so, whatever's sacred, it can't be sold, right? Some people are going to be listening to this and be like, well, how dare this person sell their body? You know what I mean? What is it? It's blasphemy, or you're defaming, the sacred, creation, right? And,
yeah, fair.
You know what I mean? So, but I think also, if that's what you believe, you know what I mean? Like you, every single, as that person, like you, every single day, you are essentially, buying foods, right? And these foods are, you're purchasing items, right? These are commodities you're buying, and those, whatever you're buying, so that could be you're buying a steak, you're buying some lettuce, you're buying, a hamburger, you're going to McDonald's, buying some fries, whatever it is, whatever you're buying, bro, like you're putting that in your body, you know what I mean? And then what happened? What do you think happens? It's just magic. You just put like that becomes you know what I mean? So you are buying, you're buying your body, you know what I mean? In a sense, like you're buying components, and then you're making those components become you know what I mean? It's like you are what you eat kind of thing. So yeah. It doesn't have to be like, to my point, it's like it doesn't have to be something that's like, what is it, like sacrilegious or something like that, which I think a lot of people, like, they'll look at OnlyFans and they'll think, well, no sex before marriage, like that whole like old school way of looking at it. They're gonna look through that lens, and I would say, well, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. I'm not gonna tell you to believe something else, but I would also encourage you to keep an open mind and look at it from a different perspective of, well, we're all mammals, you know what I mean? And we live in a dynamic, changing world, you know what I mean? Like, what if you perceive that OnlyFans model as like your wife, you know what I mean? And not, like, again, you could look at, and this might be like a whole, this could be a perspective that someone has, is that they look at like a female as essentially an extension of, you know, the divine feminine, right? It's like Mac Miller divine feminine. Maybe like, again, I think this is what polyamory is that you essentially see you see the creation in everyone, right? And so everyone just becomes like a different version of the same, you know, source or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like if that's what you want to call it. And so rather than saying, well, this person, I'm just like, I'm, you know, they're selling their body, you know. No, they're providing a service. You know what I mean? Just like any other service. Why do you have to like make it gross all of a sudden? You know what I mean? Like, why is it like, you know, like you pay someone to clean your room or whatever. How is that not gross? But like you pay someone to like sell their body. Like, why is that bad? You know?
Well, it's an industry. It makes money. Like, it's like sex sells, man. It has always sold, you know? So I sort of disagree with people that have that belief. Again, I'm not, you know, they're welcome to have that belief. I just disagree with it. Because I think, you know, it's always like sold in different ways, and now it's just selling, where people are taking control of their own bodies and selling it online and making money themselves. But, you know, you can go through like there's been hookers for fucking centuries, man. Like slave, like sex, you know. It's always been and I think, you know, for those people that, you know, maybe have the belief that the body is sacred and that it's a commodity that should not be sold. That's okay for them, you know, people to have that belief. I think, however, everyone should have ownership over their own body, and however they choose to, you know, live and what they choose to do with their body is completely up to them. And so if somebody wants to, you know, take naked photos of themselves and send it online, it will make money. Trust me, it fucking will. Like, pardon my language, but
pardon my French. Yeah.
So, I sort of disagree with it. I think, you know, if those people, they think the body's sacred, you shouldn't be sold online and stuff like that. Just don't do that for yourself. Then don't you know, you don't have to do that. You can choose to ignore.
And don't go out of your way to like make it a problem for someone else too, right? It's like, and there's many different cases of this where you put sex underneath the rug, right? Like you could just, not to get graphic or anything, but just look at like the stories of like the priests and stuff, and how like they essentially vowed to never, you know, get with women and stuff, and like just look how that turned out. I'm not like, you can just do your I'm not even gonna go there, but just like anytime you try to suppress your natural urges and just the natural human behavior, like it's just gonna get pushed down to into the shadows. You know, it's gonna get put into the shadows. And I mean, we could talk about anything, and you know, we could talk about drug addiction, mental health, all that stuff, but and that's actually a good topic too, just in regards to this. But you know, it's like it's not like if you are gonna take the high road here and you know, look down upon people who are, you know, only fans models, or like just anyone who's having sex before marriage or whatever, like was it no man has ever walked through their life unscathed. You know, everyone has some sort of thing happen to them. Everyone's gone through some sort of hardship. You know what I mean? As much as people like to play it off like they haven't, I feel like it's not, you're not virtuous in looking down upon someone. You know what I mean? Like, no one should look down upon someone unless they're willing to help them up. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, like what, like, so, and like, do you think that there's any downsides to OnlyFans? Like, do you feel like there's any maybe negative repercussions in society, whether that's directly or indirectly?
Yeah. That's a great question, actually, because I don't think I've ever thought about that, to be honest. I've only thought about the benefits and the thing to do. But I think certainly, it's tough to say because I haven't done it. And so I can only speak what I think would be the case sometimes. But I imagine if there's, depending on the person, there might be some sort of embarrassment, I guess, if it's, parents find out you're on it or something, or some close friends or something. I also think that, you might face challenges gaining other employment. And I think that maybe an OnlyFans star would run into if the employer just somehow knew that they were selling their body online. I would imagine they would face some sort of challenges gaining that sort of employment. That's the only really things I can think of maybe shame and embarrassment that might be attached. And again, I think that's person dependent. I don't think everyone's going to have that shame. Some people are like, this is just who I am, and they're so proud of that. And I think that's great and awesome. But yeah, then I think, there might be some sort of political or employment kind of issues that kind of come into play.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think it's like kind of like a, what do you say? It's like a self destructive mechanism almost. Like it's like, I don't think in itself, like I think in itself it can be beneficial, and I'll give my example with one of my favorite TV series ever is if you haven't seen it, Firefly, which is essentially it's a few years old. I think it's like 1990s. I highly recommend it. You have to watch it. They have a movie at the end of it, which is probably people know it more so. It's called Serenity, and it's kind of like Space Cowboys. Not to make it nerdy, but like it's so it's like a captain, and then he has a crew, and they all kind of play different roles on the ship, right, to contribute to like the rent kind of thing to keep the machine running, and they kind of do these different jobs that are kind of under the radar or whatever, right? You can watch the show. But there's this one character that gets introduced, and she, I can't remember what term they use in the show, but it's not like a modern term. It's a companion. That's what they use. They say companion, which is essentially modern day like prostitute or like escort, right? And what's interesting is that like this is in the future, right? And so you got to imagine like whoever created this is a genius, because like you can just it's old, but like you can still tell like it's like they're really far ahead of the times, right? And so in the time that it's based on, because everything's like in space, you know what I mean? You can't really have a family, like not in the same way. I guess you could, but if you're like on the road all the time, you need a companion, right? Or and the companion could be like someone who massages you, chats to you, you know what I mean? But sometimes it's sex, you know what I mean? But it's a service, and it's like it's very actually looked highly upon because everyone sees how much of a benefit it has on the soldiers and the people, you know what I mean, and of these in these stressful roles. If you're in a high stress position, like you don't really have time to maybe hold down a relationship or whatever, right? But then having a companion like to support you, is actually super super great, And so my point would be that it can, and it has a potential to be really good because it can kind of give people a release, like, and just in general, like it can, I don't know, like it is kind of like we're humans, right? We need some sort of outlets for our animalistic urges and stuff like that, right? So it can be beneficial for that, right? And for that expression and again, empowerment of the individuals that are on it. But then there's also the side of, well, if it is perceived as taboo, right, which in many cases it is, so your employer might not look highly upon it, or, politically they might not look highly upon it. For all those reasons, what can happen is that individual can get brushed aside, and then so then their mental health struggles because they're not getting the support they need. You know what I mean? And then that also falls on to everyone else as well in some ways. And I feel like, I don't know, I've never done it, so I don't know, but I'm sure it can be isolating because you're not always, you know, like it's your job, you know what I mean? Like you're kind of playing a role. Like that's not how you are all the time, but you recognize like that you have to show up in a certain way for someone else, you know what I mean? Because you're playing that role in their life, but maybe underneath you're like, well, I don't know how I feel. You know what I mean? You're kind of disconnected from how you feel because you're so involved in the character that you're playing. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Jim and Andy, but Jim Carrey ultimately gets so immersed in this character that he forgets who Jim even is. Like, he's literally like, who's Jim? Like, I'm Andy. You know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes that can be the case, is that you get so into this character that it can be like self-destructive in a way. And you can not, you know, you can neglect some aspects of how you feel about certain things. You know, people can say rude things to you and they can get away with it because you don't really have as much support, because people aren't really going to reach out and help you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you end up, you probably do a lot of things that you maybe wouldn't normally be comfortable with, but because you're getting paid to do it as well, you kind of do it. Like, I imagine, you know, I guess you can like live cam. I don't know if you can do that on OnlyFans, if that's like a thing that like you go somewhere else to do, or where people leave like comments, they ask you to do something and you do it or something. Like, yeah, I think you kind of get led into trying to play this character or please the people, and you end up just doing things that you wouldn't normally be comfortable doing for the money, and you kind of could lose yourself a little bit in that. And surely it's a bit isolating too, because I don't imagine, like, you know, I don't know how many people are on OnlyFans. I don't know what the statistics is, but I imagine that it's a small part of the population as it is right now. And so there's not a lot of people you could probably relate to when you want to talk about it.
Right.
It's probably a bit isolating that way.
And you're probably not going to be super open about it. I mean, you might be, but it's like, you know, like you're always afraid to get cast out of like social groups and stuff like that, right? People might not invite you out, socialize or whatever. Yeah. So, yeah.
Or maybe people will invite you out. I don't know, because you're the fun one. Who knows?
Yeah, no. Yeah. No, it's very valid. And I feel like that can be related to many different roles too. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different positions where you kind of like, I don't know, you can like, even if you just work like a desk job, which I'm sure a lot of people do, you know, it's like it can be isolating too in that regard, where it's like you can't really relate to many people because, you know, you go to work, you know, you're in the office all day, you maybe talk to a few people in the office, and then you go home and maybe you watch Jeopardy, you know, and it's maybe jerk off and then you head to bed. Like, I don't know, but like it's the same thing. It's like whatever job you're in, you kind of are in your loop, you know, you're kind of in your bubble thing, and then you might not get support or like different perspectives, and it can kind of drag you along like that for a while.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wish we knew the actively.
Wait, you said you wish what?
I said I wish we knew someone like who is an OnlyFans star,
bro,
that we can get on.
I'm not gonna put myself on the spot, but I do know someone who used to be, and then after they met me, they stopped. But that's just because like, you know, of the dynamic we had. But like, I know someone that we could. If you wanna ask questions, you know, I can relate it to them, and then like I've like a lot of the insight I have is because of I was like fairly intimate. I was intimate with this person, you know, and so I mean, so I'm not just someone just saying stuff, you know what I mean? Like I feel like I definitely, especially when I got immersed in it, I reckon I had to like let go of all of the things I thought it was, and really just be like, what is this? Like, how does this work? And what is it all about? And then it got me just curious, and because I initially I felt a certain type of way, obviously, because I'm like, I'm a little bit like thrown off by that, but I didn't, I wasn't like, oh, well, how could this person, like it wasn't like that. But yeah, I'm always open,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's essentially being just like, I'm a porn star.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
What's the difference?
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only difference is it's a porn star that manages themselves versus like it's a self-managed porn star, I guess.
Yeah.
So you feel a bit thrown off by that thing as well.
Well, this is one thing I will say, because like I feel like it's the same thing even just with this podcast, and kind of the intention I went with this podcast is that like a lot of the time you turn on the big fucking box, the big fucking rectangle in your living room or wherever you put it, and you turn on, what is it, like channel 5 or something, it's like that, and then you get a person wearing a suit and a tie, and they have all their their paper or whatever in front of them, and they're sitting all professional like, and not to discredit them, because obviously they work really hard and it takes a lot to be in that position and in that role. But I'm saying is that people, like, for some reason they assume that that person has an authoritative role, and that they are kind of like above, we pedestalize these people who are inside this rectangle that's in our hands or in our living rooms, and we almost think like, oh, I can never be that person, or it's like we I don't know, it's like we dehumanize these people, right? It's like they're not as relatable because they've like presented themselves in a certain way, and so now they're like at arm's reach from us. It's like we gotta idolize them and all this stuff. I lost track of what I was gonna go with that, but yeah, essentially, like in this podcast, I wanted it to be, like we could totally do that. Like we could have like a what is it? One of those desks. You know what I mean? We have a suit, and we could like tune in tonight for the live news. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not gonna do that because it just, I want people to like be like, I can do that too, because like you definitely can in your own way, and it doesn't have to be a certain thing, that was the point I was going to make, is like pornography, right? Is like that suit and tie thing. It's all performative, you know what I mean? Like it's not like when you're in a relationship, you can't expect that from your partner, right? Going back to expectations, you can't expect your sex life to be like porn. You know what I mean? This person didn't train their whole life, or get into this industry, and then people train them or whatever to do whatever the thing that they're doing in the videos. You know what I mean? All of that is like very performative. I'm sure some of it's great, whatever. I'm sure, no judgment, but I just feel like people, I don't know, they kind of like are it's like they're disconnected from the reality of like what their, like what life is, their relationships and stuff are like. They kind of see through the lens of like reality TV, or like, you know what I mean, or like just pornography, or like the news or whatever. It's like that's not real life, those aren't like real humans. I mean, they are behind the suits and everything, like underneath, but I'm just saying like it's all essentially like a character that's put on, right? So I feel like a lot of people don't like know that. Maybe they do, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's a whole topic, man. Like, I don't know. We talked about forever, that OnlyFans thing. And, I think it's just the start of it, too. Like, we're going to see how this evolves into next as well. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. But, yeah. I want to ask you, so I kind of do want to get wrapped up pretty soon, but there was one thing I was going to ask you, actually. Oh, yeah. So, the story you told me at the start of the podcast about your dad, and his kind of story about meeting your mom.
Yeah.
Like he's seen her At a gym? What is it? Can you
Yeah.
just reiterate real quick?
So my mom and dad met at a gym, right? And then they had a conversation. They got to know each other a little bit, and then didn't clue into my dad until afterwards that like, oh, I really like this girl, but like they didn't have cell phones back then, didn't have any way to get in contact. So he like what he did actually initially, I left this out, but he went to this gym at the same time that they met, right? Every weekend, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a few weeks. Like he would just go there every time. And then he started asking around, oh, you seen her? You seen her? You seen her? And then he ended up calling the university and then asking someone, hey, do you know this person? And then he just like tracked her down through like asking people, like, do you know this person? Yeah. Anyways.
It's cool. It's cool that it, like that's your parents' love. It's really cool, actually. And she like fell for it and was like, you gotta live happily ever after or whatever. But I'm curious, like, what do you think if that happened today? What do you think the outcome would be?
I think it depends. I mean, like my dad is like a you know. Like
I do that exact scenario. I meet a gym. Yeah, I'm going every week.
Yeah.
I think it does too. Like, you know, it's funny. Like, there's this thing about pretty privilege, right? Like, I think if I was, let's just say I'm the most attractive man ever. I'm like Jason Momoa, man. I'm Aquaman. Okay. I go to the gym and every week and I'm tracking this girl down. Like, of course she's, you know, if she likes Aquaman, I'm in, right? But there could be this element of, you know, it's creepy, like, in a sense, you know, too. So I think it depends. I think you're right.
It depends on the energy. Depends on the energy for sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think if you're like approaching it from it, like, I think this also has to do kind of with relationships. I feel like if you're approaching the relationship with like the cup is half empty, you know what I mean? It's like I need to fill my cup up with this person or whatever. You know, that's when like the creepiness comes in. Is like it's kind of like you're kind of like trying to chase this person or whatever. But I think if you approach it in a place of like the cup's half full or like a place of love, you know, appreciation for this person, like a lot of people don't realize too that, you know, if you're a guy or whatever, you play an important role in like support, you know, and providing, right? And it's like you're actually doing the female a solid by being in her life because, you know, you're holding, like, you're grounding the energy down, you know what I mean? So I feel like some people will be like, oh, I shouldn't talk to that girl. It's like, no, bro, you could change her life, you know what I mean? Like, don't just think about you and how you'd feel if you got rejected, you know what I mean? Think about her and how you could like contribute to her life, you know what I mean? The framing of that is more like giving energy, you know? So I don't know. I feel like it definitely depends on the energy. I don't know the whole circumstance. I'm just thinking about how everything is now, how my parents ended up together and everything. So yeah, I feel like today it might be a little odd and like it could be a little standoffish, but you know, in that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it definitely wouldn't happen today. No way. Not in that same way.
You do it like that today. Like, I think the university, when your dad told the university, they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, we can't give you this person. Like, you know, be like, oh, like, we got to call the police right now. Something. There's just, I don't know, a lot of safety protocols and stuff now and stuff. But yeah, I think you're right. It depends on the person, the people involved. It depends on the energy and the intent from your dad as well, I think. There's a few different elements there, but it certainly wouldn't happen today. I don't think. Like, not many men are probably going to go do that. Anyways,
yes, sir.
Do we summarize the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like people are just still. I hope that people use the whole love on a spectrum. I want that to live on for sure.
That's a good takeaway for all you listeners. Love on a spectrum.
Love on a spectrum, yeah.
Tell her romantic, or next time you go on a date with a girl, tell her you love her at the red mark.
Yeah, see how that works out. Yeah. First date, just jump in. Yeah.
It's really cool. I think takeaway for anybody that actually is listening. yeah, I think we had some interesting perspectives maybe too, like on, trying to figure out what you value when going into a relationship and communicating that with your partner, whether it's setting a contract or, proper boundary setting, I think is really important. So, we touched on values, the importance of communication, love on the spectrum. What else did we touch on today?
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll talk more, of course. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many things we can go deeper on. I think like the idea, even just having the conversation, not judging, and just being open and kind of like, even if you feel a certain type of way, like, it's like the cognitive dissonance, like how could they say that? It's like, take a step back, you know what I mean? Like, and just watch your reaction, like that's what I would say to that. And just like watch why you got, and like understand why you got triggered. Like that's a really key moment to like for you to like recognize, hey, like this is something that happened, I can address this and heal it and be freed from it, right? I don't know, and relationships really, that's honestly like the hugest thing with relationships is that like even you might not feel ready for it, but it's going to be such a growing, process and growing like experience for you. So yeah, like allow yourself to be happy, allow yourself to give to the other person, and it's don't always be so caught in your head and caught in like what you're doing and whether you're doing it right. Live in the moment and flow, like we're talking about as well, be just as present as possible. Yeah, what else we're saying? We're saying, and don't like, and not judging, and not judging whatever is arising. Like, that's the whole, again, going to the OnlyFans and all that stuff. I feel like if whatever, however you're gonna see it, right? It exists. Porn has been around forever, like we talked about, and it's not gonna go away. So it's like with anything, I think what we can do is learn to kind of integrate, you know what I mean? And by neglecting people, it's not going to ever solve the problem. It's not going to magically heal them. I think that by talking about it, and be like, hey, like I feel a certain type of way. Cool, I do too. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I disagree. Maybe, this or that. Just having the conversation, and like even just recognizing, hey, these people, they're people too, so maybe reach out to these people, maybe not, I don't know. But I just think that if we just keep pushing things under the rug, I don't think anything's really going to get solved, even if you don't want it to continue, I don't think it's going to be solved, if, the way I look at it, right, is that like, if you get triggered by something, that's you, if you can heal that, you set yourself free, because now you're not being pulled like a puppet, like you're not being pulled by these things, like you're unmoved by them, and so that's actually like the most empowering thing you can do for yourself is just being freed from, being triggered, being manipulated, if you put it like that. What else? Anything else?
I think that's it, man.
Yeah,
nailed it.
Yes, sir. That was great, man. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, for anybody that is listening, hopefully there's some takeaways. Hopefully, enjoyed listening to two guys that don't really know what they're talking about, talk about relationships, and their opinions on it. So yeah, but it was fun. I had a good time, and we should do another podcast. I think it'd be cool.
Yes, sir. Anything you want to say to the viewers? Anyone out there?
Just tell your mom you love them. Remember to do that. Don't text and drive.
Yeah. Always wrap your willy.
I think.
Yeah.
Wrap your willy. Yeah, that's important too.
We didn't talk about that either. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't, that's subject for another time, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, we love them. Don't text and drive. And yeah.
All right, we're out. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for tuning in to the ENN. Peace out.
Yep.